What is up, everyone? Today we are going to be reviewing Lesson 4 Drawbox, going through all of my assignments, all of my practices for this lesson. And first of all, let me say there have been a few more persons who have joined the journey here with me. I first want to say thank you for joining. It keeps me inspired, and I hope that I can also continue to keep you inspired as well through my progress, through the things that I'm doing as I share my practices. And as we dive into this lesson, there are going to be some things that, if you're an absolute beginner, definitely I want you to take away. The main thing for me going through this lesson is, again, just continuously being surprised at how I should probably stop saying how bad some of the early parts of the drawing look, but really when you're setting up the construction, some of it really feels like you don't have that feeling that this is going to turn out well. But the more and more I go through these lessons from Drawbox, the more confidence I gain that your drawing is going to be okay if you push through and if you're following the correct procedures. Don't sweat it too much. There are gonna be mistakes in there, but by and large, it still turns out, in most cases, better than you thought. And you may have seen again from the thumbnail that it's gonna be anyway. Let's jump in. Let's jump in, everyone. So this is lesson 4. We started again. The first thing to do was these organic shapes, putting in our contour lines around them. Some of these turned out better than others, but again, I'm just learning now that this is just practice, and the more you do it, the better you become. But even in this state, it still turns out pretty well in the end, and it doesn't look like much here, but it turns out pretty well. Just trust me, hang in there if you're doing Drawbox as well and you're still in those earlier stages. You will get there. You'll get there. This is we had to do 2 pages of these, so this was just another one. And here, this was following the first drawing that he did, and I followed his example as he was doing it. One of the main things on this was my initial construction line for the abdomen section did not line up, and it's quite disconnected from the thorax here. I think that's what we call it, the thorax. But other than that, I think this turned out really well. It took a while, and it does take a while to go back through and add more line weight to some of these outer lines. But it's a great learning experience because again, when you put down the initial shapes, it doesn't look like much. This was the next one. It was some type of lice, I think, that lives on the human body. Kind of disgusting, but stuck in there with the shapes following again. This was from his example that he gave. Basically doing these sausage shapes, as he calls them, for the arms and the gesture through the arms. Turns out okay, but it's just kind of a creepy thing there. This was his demonstration on the scorpion, and I must say, out of all of them that I had done so far, when I completed this one, I was really excited about how it turned out. These little shadow texture marks that he put along here that showed how the shape or the structure on the back of the scorpion turned, that turned out really cool. And I kind of stole that and used it on several other ones as well, but like how those claws turned out as well, and trying to follow his shadow mapping as well. But again, this was one that he demonstrated, and I followed along with the demonstration. Here was another spider, a spider that he did as well in demonstration. And again, I think this one turned out really well. Again, one of the things I did do different on this one specifically, that I didn't do on some of the previous ones, I was noticing with the positioning of the different segments of the leg that I was having a challenge in just solely doing the sausage shapes directly without having any reference of where they should start and end. And so on this specific drawing, I started creating the loop points for the leg in the position and the size that I thought it should be in terms of just looking at the reference and going, oh, this kind of ends down below the abdomen, and so I put a circle here, and then I would have again a reference to draw my sausage shape, and I think it turned out a little bit better. I could be a little bit more freer in how the sausage looked and stuff like that, so I liked how this one turned out. Yeah. This was a fly demonstration that he did. So again, still at this point, following along the demonstrations and actually doing them. Again, I can't overemphasize how important that is to actually do the demonstrations. So this was a fly that he did. I followed along with the demonstration, got the fly done. Some of the texture not quite as I wanted, but did like how just putting these few here spikes in there actually added to the texture effect. But I did really like how this fly turned out. Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by these small flying creatures, so these were some more demonstrations that he did, and some of these I'm going to run through pretty quickly, but this was a lobster type one that was demonstrated. I think there wasn't a video for this, it was just one that was demonstrated on a page, and so I went ahead and did that one as well as these two were also just page demonstrations talking about how the different textures should wrap around the abdomen, and also adding some texture techniques here to this beetle that wasn't complete, but there was no reference for it. It was just a demonstration, and I just copied the demonstration as well, including the construction. But I think that still turned out pretty cool. I don't know how well I am capturing this specific texture method in some of my other drawings, but I don't remember actually, but we'll see as we get to them. But yeah, I think this turned out pretty cool, and I definitely like the texture from that example, and stole these little texture on the feet from his examples as well. So this was the first insect construction that I did by myself. I really liked, this is a bee, if you can't tell, you probably could. I think it turned out okay enough. So yeah, again, I really plotted where the beginning and end points for these leg segments were going to be. You can still see some of the circles behind there. You can see the circle for the back of the abdomen, just so I know where to go. Now, one of the things that I really struggled with and still working on is the shadow shapes underneath, and probably it has to do with planning a little bit more before I jump into my shadow shapes, but yeah, I mean, it's not bad if the light's coming in from this side, but some of the other ones you're gonna see that I was really struggling with some of the shadow shapes, but this was the first one, and I think it turned out okay. This ant was the second one. I really liked this one as well in terms of how it turned out. Pretty cool. The shadow. Yeah, and at some point, I think you're going to realize that you're not perfect. Starting to realize it more and more. And basically it just comes down to giving it your best shot. And sometimes I think sometimes it's easy to sometimes not plan ahead as much as you do. It's almost breaking of old or bad habits, and and I'm telling myself that when I come to shadow shapes, I need to be basically plan it out more and really think about it. But sometimes I still find myself just jumping in and starting it, and then when I look at it, it's like ah. But yeah, I still really liked how the ant turned out on a whole. Looks pretty cool. This one was a mosquito. I didn't even notice that I didn't put a shadow shape on this one, but we have a mosquito here, and I think it turned out alright. This was a beetle. The reference that I used, some of the legs were actually not in the photo, and so they kind of disappear off the screen here. This one, the shadow shape isn't too bad. Wasn't quite satisfied with how some of the horns turned out for this beetle. I don't think it quite captured what I was seeing, but it was a good effort, and I probably learned something from that as well. This was another beetle here, and I think this one turned out pretty good as well. Creepy crawlies. He actually demonstrated how to put these little bushes and rocks into your photo as well. So you'll see on some of the drawings that I did, I threw them in. They're bigger in the foreground, and of course as they go backwards, they get progressively smaller, which kind of creates some depth there. So it's pretty cool. So this picture of this wasp, I actually ended up doing twice, and you'll see that the second one on the next page. Again, leaving in all of my practice sheets, and let me point something out here, because I always talk about it turns out better than I thought. When you see these pictures, a lot of times we're looking at them as a whole, but you look at how the wing turned out on this one, and some of the legs aren't quite as shapely as they should be. Like, there are things that are off on it, but again, when you view it as a whole, some of those mistakes aren't as glaring as you may think. Again, the most important thing is push through, give it your best shot. And so I decided to go back in a second time and do another one. There were some things I liked more about this one. There were some things I liked about the other one, but I carried this one to more of a finish. But it's the same drawing. Have a slightly better shaped wing. One of the things he pointed out was having the ability to knock back some of these features by just doing a flat hatch across them, which kind of pushes them into the background a little bit more and makes it more obvious that these objects are in front of those legs back there. And I use that on several of the upcoming drawings as well. This one was a real cool crab that I saw and decided to throw it in. Another thing that I had changed up by this point was, of course, you're putting your connection points, and as I said, putting the points where I plan to draw my sausage shape, but also creating the sausage shape in kind of the shape of what the leg is going to actually be. And if the leg has a lot of body at one end, one of the things he teaches, of course, is to put in the small sausage shape first and then come back over with a larger sausage shape that goes around it. That helps you better in your construction. I must say that on this one, it really started hitting home for me how crazy your initial construction can look, but yet it still turns out okay. I mean, just having those guides in place. In one of my very, very early videos, I talked about having a guide before you go and put down those more confident lines. And again, like, this is really showing up now in the construction of these animals and creepy crawly stuff. That just having that guide to then go over and place in the shape that you want, it's so liberating. It makes things so much easier. So yeah, just doing the construction makes those final lines so much easier. This was a woodlouse, quite a few legs here. Tried a lot more texture on this one. Didn't quite capture it in the way I saw it on the reference, but I think it still turned out pretty well. As you can see, a lot of the construction that's still showing through, but again, with the line weight, it kind of fades into the background and turns out good. This was the cricket that you saw on the splash screen or thumbnail for this video. I really liked how this cricket turned out, and it did feel like I was having some progression through the different drawings. It was really cool. Really liked how the antennas turned out, and again, getting into the practice of doing really confident lines, so you could see how straight that line is. I put a dot where I thought the line should end up, and then of course using the ghosting and then just going for it. Boom. But it turned out nice. I really liked it. So if anyone, you're looking forward to these lessons, again, just follow the instructions through each lesson. They're telling you to put down confident lines. You're going to feel like you're making mistakes, like you're messing up, like you don't want to put down confident lines. Just follow the instructions. Just follow the instructions, and yeah, just keep on going for it. Some things are going to be more challenging than others, but really liked how this cricket turned out. Again, knocking back this back leg and that back leg going back, putting in a little bit of texture, doing some texture on the ground as well. Really like how that cricket turned out. And for the centipede, now I must say, out of all of the drawings, this centipede, the initial construction that I put down for it versus what I ended up with, like, totally blew my mind. And again, I can't say this enough, especially for this lesson, that when you're putting down your construction, don't get thrown off about how it looks in that moment. Do your best putting down the construction and keep your lines confident, and in the end, having those guidelines for you to put down the harder weight lines. And the harder weight is basically me going over the line several times, right? That's how you build up the line weight. Wow. I really liked how this one turned out. With all these little legs on it, I did knock back some of them to kind of push them off to the distance, so this looks closer than this, and this part looks closer than that. But really liked how it turned out. So thanks again if you stuck through this. I hope in seeing my progress, it kind of inspires you to push through, especially if you're going through some of those more beginner lessons. Push through it, hang in there, and I'm going to be continuing to learn how to get better, but I'm being inspired by my progress, and I hope you're inspired as well. If you're a professional, or if you've already gone through this course and you have additional tips that you can give me as I go through, put them in the comments. Let me know what I can be doing better. I love to learn, and I hope that you enjoy this journey. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, follow me along, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.